You know that feeling, that constant chatter inside your head, the lists, the worries, it just goes on
It
sometimes.
really does. Like a radio station you can't quite turn off.
Exactly. And, well, one of you actually asked us to explore this, which brings us to today's deep dive. Eckhart Tolle's huge bestseller, The Power of Now.
Ah, yes. A book that really struck a chord. It wasn't like an instant hit back in 97, but it gained this incredible momentum. You saw it getting nods from Forward, Watkins books, Common Ground,
Right, loads of places.
and then it just took off. #1 on the New York Times list, translated into, what, 30 languages?
Mhm.
It clearly speaks to something universal.
Absolutely. And the core promise really is that we can step out of that mental noise, that we can find, real peace right here.
In the present moment.
And look, this isn't about getting lost in some complex philosophy. Our goal here for you is to pull out the practical stuff, the insights, those aha moments that you can actually use.
Exactly. And the central idea, the one we're really going to unpack, comes straight from Tolle. You are not your mind. We want to explore what that actually means, why it's so important, and, well, how getting that can change your daily life, help you find that inner calm.
Okay, let's start with a big word he uses. Enlightenment. Sounds kind of intimidating, maybe out of reach.
Yeah, it can definitely sound that way. Our minds, our egos often make it seem like this, superhuman thing, like you need to be a monk on a mountaintop.
Right.
But Tolle brings it right down to earth. He calls it your natural state, a felt oneness with being. It's like finding this deep connection to something bigger than just you, but also like the very core of you.
Okay, oneness with being.
Yeah, something immeasurable, indestructible. It's like uncovering the quiet awareness that's always there underneath all the thoughts and feelings.
That makes it feel a bit more possible, and he uses that story, the beggar on the box.
No, yeah, the beggar parable. It's so good. This guy spent his whole life begging, sitting on this old box, right?
Mm.
And he has no idea the box is full of gold. Tolle uses that to show how the real treasure, that deep peace, the joy of just being, it's already inside us.
We're sitting on
We're
it.
sitting on it. But we're looking outside for, validation, love, security, like beggars, unaware of the wealth within.
And he connects this idea of ending suffering back to the Buddha, doesn't he?
He does. He really
Yeah.
resonates with that simple definition. Enlightenment is the end of suffering. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Right. It's pretty universal.
But he also notes it's incomplete. It tells you what enlightenment isn't, not what it is. And that silence is deliberate.
Mm.
It suggests it's something you experience directly, not just another idea to think about.
Mm.
And defining it negatively stops the mind from making it just another goal to chase.
Okay, so being, that word keeps popping up. What does he really mean by being?
Right. So being is, well, it's the eternal underlying life, the one life beneath all the different forms we see.
Like the essence of everything.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not just out there. It's also your own deepest self, your fundamental nature. But here's the thing. You can't think your way to understanding being.
You can't grasp it mentally.
No.
Why?
You can only really know it when the mind gets quiet, when you're fully present in the now. Then you can feel it like this deep sense of aliveness. But it always escapes the intellect.
Okay.
So reclaiming that awareness, living from that space that's enlightenment for Tolle, think of it like the operating system of your consciousness, always running, even when all the apps, your thoughts are busy.
I like that analogy.
You don't see the OS directly, but it's essential. Presence is like closing the apps for a moment to glimpse the core system.
And he makes the point about being versus, say, the word God.
Yeah, he does. He suggests God has become loaded with mental images, specific ideas.
Baggage.
Sort of, yeah. Baggage that can actually get in the way of a direct experience. Those images might have helped once, but now they can be barriers. The real question is, does the word help you feel connected, or does it just create another concept?
He prefers being because it's more open. It's harder for the mind to turn it into a fixed thing, an idol. It's not separate from you. It's your essence right here. That feeling of I am before you add any labels.
That basic sense of just existing, which links to what he calls Descartes' error, doesn't it? I think, therefore I am.
Exactly. Tolle sees that as the fundamental mistake, equating thinking with being, identifying ourselves as our thoughts.
So we think we are our thoughts.
Right. And the compulsive thinker, which, let's be honest, is most of the time lives in this state of apparent separation. The world seems full of problems, conflicts, because the mind itself is fragmented. Enlightenment, then, is wholeness. being at one with the world, with yourself, with being. It's not just ending suffering, but also freedom from being enslaved by constant, often pointless thinking.
So this deep identification with our minds, that's the main hurdle, the thing keeping us from that natural state.
That's exactly it. Toll says this identification creates an opaque screen. Concepts, labels, judgments, words.
Like a filter. A very thick filter, yeah. It blocks true connection with yourself, with others, with nature, with, the divine, whatever you call it.
Mm.
This constant stream of thought creates the illusion that we're all separate.
When really we're connected underneath.
We lose sight of that fundamental truth that beneath all the surface differences, we're all part of the same underlying being. So a lot of our suffering isn't the events themselves, it's our mental interpretation through that noisy screen.
Okay, so if the mind is the problem, how do we start to, untangle ourselves? How do we free ourselves from the mind?
The first step, and it sounds almost too simple, is to start watching the thinker.
Watching the thinker.
Yeah. Told points out most people have this constant voice in the head, this involuntary stream of thoughts, internal monologues. We often don't even realize we can observe it.
Just feels like us.
Exactly. It's like, the person muttering on the street, but it's happening inside our heads. Constantly commenting, judging, worrying, comparing, complaining. It jumps between rehashing the past and worrying about the future, often negatively. Even when it looks at the present, it sees it through old conditioning. It can be our own worst critic, draining our energy, causing misery, even physical issues.
So watching means becoming a detached observer of all that.
Pretty much. Listening to the voice without getting sucked in, without judgment. Just noticing the thoughts drift by like clouds. Not trying to stop them, at least not at first. Just creating some space, some awareness around them.
And this isn't like zoning out or becoming passive.
No, quite the opposite, actually. Toll stresses it's an increase in alertness, in presence. When you're aware of your thoughts, instead of being lost to them, you're actually more awake.
More connected.
More connected, yeah. He even says it raises the vibrational frequency of your energy field.
He also makes that great point about the mind being a tool.
Yes, a super useful tool. But for specific jobs, solve the problem, make the decision, then you're meant to put the tool down, go back to stillness.
But we don't, do we?
We really don't. For most people, he estimates something like 80 to 90% of thinking is just repetitive, useless, and often negative or harmful. It's a huge energy leak.
Like an addiction to thinking.
It really functions like an addiction.
Yeah.
We feel we have to keep thinking, even when it hurts. We forget how to stop. And this leads to a really crucial insight he shares. The present moment holds the key to liberation. But you cannot find the present moment as long as you are your mind.
Wow. Okay.
The actionable bit there isn't just knowing about the voice. It's realizing you can step back, watch it, create that gap between thought and awareness. That's the first step.
No, I can hear someone thinking, hang on, if I stop thinking so much, won't I become less intelligent? Won't I lose my ability to analyze things?
That's a really common and understandable concern. Totally valid.
Yeah.
But Tolle clarifies that directed conscious thinking is just one small part of consciousness. Thinking needs consciousness to exist, but consciousness definitely doesn't need thinking. I mean, think about the complexity of your own body, of life itself. That wasn't created by logical thought, was it? There's a much bigger intelligence at play.
Right.
And when the mind reconnects with that deeper intelligence, that intuition, it actually becomes a better tool, more effective, serving something larger than just the ego's little agenda. Realizing that helps loosen the ego's grip.
Okay, we've talked mind. Let's shift to emotions. Tolle says emotions are basically the body's reaction to the mind. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, he sees emotions as amplified thought patterns, basically. So thoughts made physical, energized.
Energized thought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because they have this strong energy, it can be hard, especially at first, to just observe them without getting totally swept away. They kind of want to take over.
Oh, yeah.
And they often succeed, right? If you haven't built up that inner presence muscle, it's that feeling of being completely consumed by anger or just flattened by sadness. It feels the emotion is you.
It feels totally like you in that moment.
And Tolle describes this vicious cycle between thinking and emotion. They feed each other constantly.
How so?
Well, a thought pattern creates an emotion, right? It's a reflection in the body. Then the feeling, the vibration of that emotion reinforces the original thought.
Ah, okay.
So if you dwell mentally on what made you angry, you feed the anger energy which then fuels more angry thoughts, and round it goes.
He also talks about a deeper sort of primordial emotion underneath everything.
Yeah, he suggests that all our different emotions are really just variations of one fundamental, undifferentiated feeling,
Which comes from?
from losing awareness of our true nature, our formless self. It's hard to name because it's so basic, but fear is probably the closest word. It includes that sense of abandonment, incompleteness, just basic unease.
And he calls this.
He just calls it pain. He argues that a big part of the mind's job, driven by the ego, is to constantly fight or suppress this underlying emotional pain. That fight fuels a lot of its nonstop activity.
But the mind can't actually fix it.
It can only cover it up temporarily. In fact, the more the mind struggles against the pain, the stronger the pain often gets. Real freedom from that deep pain only comes when we stop identifying ourselves with the mind, with the ego.
So our daily emotions are like different flavors of this basic pain.
You could sort of see it that way. And he makes a really crucial distinction between these reactive emotions and the deeper states like love, joy, and peace.
Those are different.
He says they're beyond emotion. They exist on a deeper level of being. He even points out the word emotion comes from Latin emovere, to disturb.
To disturb. That's fascinating. And he insists that real love doesn't cause suffering.
Exactly. True love doesn't flip into hate. Real joy doesn't turn into pain. He says even before you're free from the mind, you get glimpses of these states: real joy, real love, deep peace.
Fleeting moments.
Yeah, moments when your true nature shines through the clouds of the mind. Even in difficult relationships, sometimes something real breaks through, but it gets covered up again by mental noise, ego stuff. That core of love and peace is always there, though, just obscured.
And this links to craving and desire, back to Buddhist ideas.
Yes, very much aligns with the Buddha's teaching that suffering comes from attachment to desire. Tolle sees cravings as the mind seeking fulfillment or salvation in external things in the future.
Instead of finding it now.
Exactly. Seeking externally as a substitute for the joy of being that's available right now. As long as you're identified with the mind, you are those cravings, those needs, wants, attachments, aversions. Freedom isn't about suppressing desire, but about being present with it, observing the mind's chasing, becoming the observer, the awakened one.
So if our suffering right now comes from not accepting what is, from resisting the moment, how does that lead to the pain body?
Well, Tolle says the pain we create now is always some form of non-acceptance, resistance.
Okay.
And the thought level, it's judgment, good, bad, should, shouldn't. Emotionally, it's negativity, frustration, anger, resentment. The more you resist the innation. Now, the more you identify with your mind's version of reality, the more intense the pain. The mind hates the mind, because that's where its power fades.
And the pain body is more than just this general background pain. It's something specific.
Yes, it's distinct. He describes it as this accumulation of old, unresolved emotional pain, trapped life energy that sort of clumps together.
Clumps together.
Yeah, and through our unconscious identification with it, it becomes almost autonomous, like it splits off and gets a life of its own within our energy field.
No.
He calls it anti-life, like an inner entity that feeds on negativity, on recreating painful situations. He even wonders if the collective human pain body contributes to, the destructive things civilizations do.
That's a heavy thought. So how do we know when our own pain body is stirring? What are the signs?
This is crucial. He says you have to cultivate inner awareness. Watch for any sign of unhappiness arising in you, no matter how small.
Like what?
Irritation, impatience, a dark mood, wanting to lash out or criticize, anger, depression kicking in, even just restlessness or wanting to create drama. The key is catching it right as it wakes up.
Like an early warning system.
Exactly. The big takeaway here isn't just knowing the theory. It's recognizing, that familiar irritation, that urge to complain. That's the pain body waking up. And in that moment, you can choose awareness instead of letting it hijack you. That's how you start breaking free.
And simply observing it directly, that's the key to disarming it.
That's the core practice. He says the pain body hates being seen, being brought into conscious awareness. The moment you observe it, feel its energy field directly, without judgment.
You break the identification.
You break the identification. You become the witness. You can't pretend to be you anymore, and it can't feed off your unconscious reactions. You tap into your own presence, the power of the popular eye now, and that naturally starts to dissolve it.
But he admits there can be resistance to letting go, right? Especially if we're used to our pain.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if your whole sense of self has been wrapped up in that pain for years. You've built this identity, this unhappy self, out of the pain body.
And letting go feels like losing yourself.
Unconsciously, yeah.